Good morning, everyone. Economic Ninja here. I hope you're doing well. Hope you got your coffee. I had a rough night last night. So I'm going to talk about why they are doing this to our economy. And this is the most sinister plan. Yet it's the most simple. It is the one that most people, when they find themselves caught in this plan, they will never admit to their family and friends because they're embarrassed. It may blow your mind. I was telling the guys at the fire station this plan this morning, and honestly, nobody cares. There's one guy at this department that is getting ready aggressively. He has been for a long time. He's a smart guy. And when I say smart, it's funny because I watch the dynamics of human beings and how they interact. And I'm reading a book right now about, it's called The Selfish Gene, and those that are altruistic. Can't even pronounce the word right now. And also selfish, and how economies and the evolutionary period of civilizations build up and get torn down. And when I say smart, some people would mock other people for how they act or how they look, and I think that somebody that's always positioning themselves for success in the future, hopefully being a humble yet helpful person, one that wants to help others, is extremely smart, extremely successful. But governments and certain groups of people have studied human evolution enough to where they know how to interweave plans to deceive them and how to make it so perfect to where they don't get the blame. So I've got some stories to go over, and those stories are only going to show you the pressure that's being put on civilization right now around the world, and how they are going to crush you economically, and you're not going to have a leg to stand on, and you will not blame anyone else except yourself. Inside. Outside, you may yell, scream, and get upset, and there may be some riots and things like that around the world, around the country, but nobody's going to be having one person to argue with. Check this out. One story, and it gets locked up. Go figure. Geico lays off 6% of its staff, of its workforce, prioritizes return to office. Geico is cutting 2,000 people right now, right? That's 2,000 people that are about to hit the government dole and or not be employed at all and have less money to spend, right? Some people would say, you know what, that's not that big of a deal. And of course, I'm losing my other stories. It's one of those mornings. But the reason why here we go. Telecom giant Nokia, which has a Raleigh office, has moved jobs to Red Hat, is cutting 14,000 workers, right? Another employer cutting thousands and thousands of employees, adding to the pressure. Well, check this out. There's more going on. Commercial property distress in the U.S. rises to a 10-year high. We'll get to that story in a second. The reason why I bring up these headlines is because there are two external forces that are affecting you and your finances right now. One is inflation, and we always have constant inflation. The Federal Reserve does a really good job of destroying the purchasing power of the currency all the time. This is why the founding fathers put in the Constitution, they put the fact that they didn't want to see anything other than gold and silver coin as money in the Constitution, because they had just recently, it was seared into their minds what Europe was doing, Britain was doing to its financial system, and how it was lording over through taxation, through inflation, the destruction of the purchasing power of the currency. They were treated like slaves. And so in the Constitution, they put, hey, money should be in no other form. Well, through three different attempts, and finally the third one really stuck, the bankers weaseled their way into the government through the Federal Reserve. And still, to this day, very few people understand that fact. They do not have a good grasp of history, because once again, the bankers have made a really good position themselves with money to finance schools, to pay for colleges, things like that, to take certain things out of the history books. They do not want you learning this. And the more time that passes, more and more history, more and more truth gets ripped out of those books, so that our children are just mindless, our children's children and children's children just become mindless, numb fools. They're robots, they're slaves, they're serfs, whatever you want to call them. Every different generation, we have a different name for that class of people. And what it comes down to is a mindset, right? That is why wealthy people act differently than poor people. They speak differently. If you take a rich man's money away, a couple years later, he'll have it all back. It's because of a mindset. Now, the plan and what they're going to do is so simple, and this is crazy. They're just going to wreck your credit. And it's not going to be them. When I was selling off my homes, and again, I lived a very quiet life. I didn't sit around and telling people, and again, 14 properties is not a lot. It's just not. But it was to me back in 2005. And the reason why was because I didn't personally know anyone that had more. I wish I did. If I would have found somebody that had 100 doors, I'd have at least 50. Because, iron sharpens iron. The people you're around, they help you to evolve or devolve. You go backwards sometimes. That's why you got to have good friends, good family around you. And if you don't, you go find them. But I didn't talk about it a lot. And as I was liquidating stuff and I was warning people, I witnessed a couple of different, very interesting human trends, human traits that were happening. First off, as real estate started to collapse, I know people that could have easily made their payment. They made more than enough money, but they simply could not get past the fact that their house was now worth less than they owed on it. So they walked away, thus destroying their credit score, all right? Then we saw people that had gotten themselves so deeply into debt. Their loan to income level had been so stretched, and the banks allowed this. Also, you have to remember the government allowed this because governments they change the ratios of income to debt ratios. And they're doing that right now. Again, this is all exactly the same thing. And it's not like they just started yesterday. They started doing this again back in 2018. And right now, you're seeing this wave hitting to where people are so tapped, they're walking away. And the proof that we have actual proof. All-time high delinquencies in credit card debt, all-time high repo rates in vehicles, all right? We've never seen these highs, which mean there are more Americans destroying their credit score right now than ever before, okay? These are very simple facts to understand. And yet, most Americans have no clue this is happening. All right. Oh, here's the other thing. Talking about human psychology, these elitist and policymakers, they know that when you stopped, let's say you stopped making that payment, you don't go bragging about that at the dinner parties. You don't go bragging about that at the T-ball games. You don't go say, hey, guess what I just got out of that pesky home price. I just walked, that payment, I just walked away from it. That's not how it works. People are embarrassed internally that they just lost. So they don't say crap. So then what happens is you have more Americans with a crappy credit score and with more sort of depression in their mind about capital markets and which way they're going. As everything starts falling, the reason why it's falling and it gets worse and worse, that snowball gets bigger to the downside, is because people simply do not have the ability now, because credit gets tight, because banks regress, right? Oh crap, we're all failing. Just like in 2006 to 2008, we're failing. So now we're lending out less. We've already went over the headlines on this channel for a long time. Type 1 if you understand this. Type 2 if it needs a little bit more explaining, because I'm trying to break this down I'm trying to show you a macro view of economics with the most basic explanation. So what happens is, as more people have a crappy credit score and lending constricts, and I've railed against this for a long time, that you have all these people on social media that are all these overnight, millionaires and centimillionaires, right, worth over $100 million. And they just bought their first house in 2014. They have zero clue of a constriction. They do not know what it feels like. They do not know what it's like for their big equity lines that they pulled against these properties to get a letter in the mail and say, oh, we've just cut your equity line in half, or they've canceled it, which is coming in 2024. This is going to be exciting to watch. Can't wait to watch those YouTube channels. I've seen some YouTube channels already just disappear because the people are going bankrupt or they're in a lawsuit right now and they're seized up. I know there's people in finance, just to give you guys an idea, in finance that are giving people advice and making tens of millions of dollars a year. They don't even have a corporation or an LLC for how they're taking their money in. What does that make you feel like? It's the truth. There are people who live in the basement of their parents' house doing videos on getting ready. This is the truth. And I think that and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm nobody special. I'm just somebody that, I'm a fireman. Come on, right? I started a bunch of businesses. I have done a bunch of stuff. I've tried, I've failed, I've succeeded as well. But, it's funny. Americans put such high esteem on how others dress and what they drive. And it blows me away who people take advice from. You should not take advice from me, obviously. But so that's the first reason why economies fails, because the credit score is destroyed. And because people just walk away. They just walk away from the house. They just walk away from the credit card bill, but yet you still see those people on Facebook. And this is another thing that I want people to understand. I got people in my life that have always been poor. They will be poor their entire life. They are constantly poor. And these people make over $150,000 a year. You want to know why they're poor? It's because all I got to do is get on their Facebook page and they're at every single stinking concert there is. I've never been to a big concert. I know guys right now that are about to stop having to make their certain credit card payments and stuff that I work with, and they're going to a big concert in Vegas. They're paying like $300 a ticket. It's crazy to me. But, hey, that's where people are. I think that that's one aspect that you need to realize. And once you realize this, you start to get really excited. You're like, I'm going to take advantage of this. All right, so that's one reason. People walk away from their debt. Here's the second reason. External pressures economically. And we have not seen this. Now, I'm going to explain what happened in 2005, 2006. But we have not seen this on a scale since the late 70s. And honestly, that's not even a good example because this is much worse. You want doom and gloom? Here, if you're afraid of this kind of stuff because it's called the truth, get off the channel. Don't ever watch. Because there's a lot of people who are like, you're scaring me. You're doom and gloom. You're affecting how my spouse thinks. They're like, well, it sounds like your spouse is smarter than you. I'm just talking about the truth and reading the news. So here's the thing. External forces. Let's just talk about inflation. In 2006, we saw, and to 2008, we saw a massive run up in the cost of fuel around the nation. Nothing like we have now. It's worse than that. But we also had the cost of living increase, right? So, we had property taxes going up because home prices were going up for the exact same reason. We had very little sales. People tell me all the time, they're like, you don't get it. We've never had this low of inventory. I'm like, you don't get it. The numbers are cooked. You're nuts. We're actually creating more building right now, apartments and things like that around the nation than we did in the run up to the Great Recession. The difference is how it is reported and where those building units are going to. The fact is that BlackRock and all these big companies like Vanguard are picking up properties. They're building these properties, third-party intermediaries that we really didn't see in earnest until the early teens, the 20 teens. They are building on a scale that is just unimaginable. Permits and starts are at a higher ratio than they were in the run-up to the Great Recession. And that is the truth. It's just like how inflation is, calculated today is totally different than how it was calculated back then. So we had fuel going up. We had the price of vehicles going up. We had things going up. They had pressures. And then we had the layoffs. All right, well, now we're in the layoff year. 2023, January, actually December is when tech layoffs started and 2023 layoffs. But there's something a little different this time than there was last time, and that is government intervention. Government intervention right now is at a pretty solid pace for helping people to sort of get by. And just, I want you to understand this. There's going to be a rug pull moment where all of a sudden they're like, oh, we don't have any more money. And they're going to rug pull. And that's when you're going to see riots around the country. Another thing that's going on that people do not understand is that what is happening with the Federal Reserve. All right. Right now, the repo window is open and the repurchase window. The Federal Reserve is bailing out banks. And it's so bad to where the FDIC, that recording that was, supposed to be a secret meeting where they said the banks are collapsing and we can't let the public know, that happened last November, right? That came out in the spring, and then the Fed came out with some notes saying, oh yeah, that last September, 2 Septembers ago, they said over 750 banks said they're insolvent and they need our help. And then they came out in the spring and they said, we're helping the repurchase window. We're recapitalizing these banks and making sure they're liquid. We're not only going to not tell you which banks because we're afraid you're going to pull your money out, but we're not going to tell you for up to 5 years after we're done with this process. Okay, so just to give you some scope of how bad this is, the repurchase window during the Lehman Brothers crisis didn't even open until the January of 2009. So an entire 5 months or 4 months goes by after the collapse of Lehman Brothers, after the collapse of Bear Stearns, after the stock market had taken a massive header to the tune of about 20%, right? The indices. We're already there. It's been going on for a year. We are in the crash. This is what a crash feels like. And you go, oh, come on, man, this is not how it feels like. No, if you talk to people that actually were investors back in 2006, this is the greatest part. This is when I started the channel 3.5 years ago. I said, I am going to walk you through a collapse and what it feels like. The last bit of effort, and this is when the Occupy Wall Street stuff happened on TV and on social media when they were protesting down, is because the last little clip is when everything collapses and the media tells you about it. This commercial property distress, right, in the U.S. rises to a 10-year high. So think about this. The last time commercial property was in this much distress was at the end of the Great Recession, when all the truth had come out and they're like, yeah, we're screwed, we need help and all this kind of stuff. We're at all those numbers right now, which means this crash is going to be worse, because the last phase of this crash is when human beings, the average person, your next door neighbor that you've been trying to warn, or your family or friends, they come talking to you about this. At that point, and I saw a comment the other day when I was talking about, yesterday was the anniversary of the 1987 crash. And it was ironic that yesterday the London Stock Exchange went down. And I want you to understand how big of a deal it is, because the day Lehman Brothers really crashed and the stock market fell 777 points or 7%, the opening bell didn't ring. All right, I want to put these things together. Someone commented, yeah, I remember 1987 well. I had a very successful landscaping company, and that day, by the end of close of market, people were calling me crying, physically crying, saying, I cannot have you do my landscaping anymore. I've lost everything, right? So that is what we're waiting for. I believe that comes in 2024. But when I was warning everyone about the end of September, beginning of October, I said, everything's going to come out and you're going to see the truth. This is what we've seen now. We have multiple wars. The Middle East is erupting in war right now. There are rockets and missiles being fired from one country to the next, right? We got Yemen involved, all this stuff. Okay, this is a big deal. We've now stretched our military thin. There is now talk, the rhetoric of Taiwan and China is getting louder. Our money is being stretched thin. The 10-year is hitting highs that it has not seen since, and remember this, people don't remember this. In 2004, the 10-year was a lot lower than it was in 2006, right? 2007. And what it did is it moved up, it ramped up, and it did run away from the Fed funds rate, just like it is now. But this time is so much worse because everything that's at 10 years based off of all the debt is at nosebleed levels. We now have a 40-year Fannie and Freddie fixed mortgage. You don't see it a lot because people need some time. And I did a video about it a year prior to it starting. And you don't see it used a lot. And the reason why is because it takes time to acclimate to that higher percentage rate. But once people realize, oh my gosh, that thing's going to cost me, yeah, okay, then the lights go out. That thing's I'm going to save a couple $100, they're going to dive into it, right? But they're going to be paying a much higher rate. This is akin to the time when we went from 15 and 20-year mortgages to a 30-year mortgage. It was a lot to swallow, and it took markets a long time to digest that they're going to be paying a higher rate for a longer term loan and that they're going to be in debt that much longer. But look at where we are now. 30-year is the golden rule, and 40-year will become that. I believe during this crisis, you may even see a 50-year mortgage rollout. And the reason why is because governments and banks so desperately want you enslaved for even longer. So those are the two reasons why I know that this crash is going to be bad. And what people, again, do not understand is if you do not hold on to that credit score, and I hate the idea of a credit score anyway, but it is what it is, you will not be participating in this. That's what I teach in the real estate crash course, all these other courses. It's so important. The first thing is we've got to make sure that you are keeping your credit score and keeping your head screwed on tight and not getting all wobbly like everybody else around you. That's your competition. It must make you feel good because it makes me feel great. The only thing is I don't want to be crushing it alone. I want to crush it with a million of you. I want to leave a legacy, which I'm sure you do, of helping people. And the truth is we can't help each other unless we got a credit score because you're not going to be able to qualify for these loans. And the banks know that. And what they will be doing is scooping them up, and they will be going into hedge funds that they all run themselves, their buddies all run it, and becoming even more powerful. And if you think for a second that too big to fail wasn't insane during 2008, this one that they've got planned is so serious, it ain't even funny. We can't even joke around about it. This is nuts. And somebody just brought up the silver to real estate ratio in 1980. It was a real thing. And if you look at their silver to housing ratio in 2008, from 2008 to 2012, it was like a 4-to-1 leverage. It was impressive. 3-to-1, something like that. Everybody, get ready. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you for the support. I really appreciate it. I'm so grateful to everybody that's been bringing in the comments for the real estate crash course. You guys are awesome. I just can't believe I'm able to make this much of an impact, but it's really not me. It's you. You can't change the world until you get up and go, enough's enough. I'm ready to rock and roll. All right, with that being said, the Economic Ninja is out.